Well, we're starting off the day with finishing up this chopper. We got just a couple hours of work left to do on it, but the first order of business is we have to see if we can't maybe reshape this rim. It goes on the injector, and what we need to do is we need to get another rim, but in the meantime we're going to try to pound this thing back to its original shape and see if we can't maybe make it work for today anyways. So we have a new tire over there on the floor that we're going to try mounting to this rim, but we need to pound this back. Then maybe we could put a piece of 1/2-inch rod or something around the outside of it to kind of strengthen it a little bit, because it has been knocked around a little bit. They had a flat tire on it the other day, ruined the tire, and they wanted to keep going, and all it really does is it's just a gauge wheel, and they kept going with it, and now this is what we have. So let's go ahead and see if we can't maybe reshape this. Alright, it's not entirely perfect, but it's definitely a lot better than it was. I need to maybe put a little bit of heat on it and correct this bead a little bit so that we can actually get the tire to seal up to it. But I think a little more hammering and we'll have it right back to its workable shape here. But I've got the bead lip just about where it needs to be, but I've got a spot like right here that needs to be pounded down. We might be able to put a little bit of heat on that to get that down. Now once we get the tire mounted and get air in it, it's easier to shape the rim to the tire when you have the tire mounted. So we might need to get it to that point where we can mount it, and then we can reshape the areas that need to be pounded down towards the actual bead itself. So we'll keep at this here. I'll have to take the grinder around this edge so that we don't rip the bead at all on the tire when we go to mount it. And I also need to, well, maybe this valve stem is okay. It didn't look like the valve stem was in the greatest shape here, so we might have to clean that up and remove it to make sure that valve stem is okay. Well, we've got a tire all mounted, but I had to put a tube in it because the tire was just, the beads were too close together. It was too squished down. This is a 8.5-inch wide rim, and the tire is really ballooned out, as you can see. The way it sits on there, and there just isn't enough tire here to be able to hit it with a Cheeto. We tried hitting it with ether too, and that didn't work, so we figured the best thing to do would be to just put a tube in it. I did heat the rim up a little bit right here and there because the rim was dented down too far. It was dented out, so we had to pound that back, and it's pretty good. I was going to weld a ring on the inside here, but it'd be lucky to get a couple of days out of this, so we're gonna have to get a new one and then we could just use this one as a spare. But it is pretty good. We'll see how she goes compared to what it was.
It's just an injector.
It was almost square earlier.
Honestly, it'll probably never bother.
So this is what the tire goes on. It goes on the injector, which is on the 8,500 gallon Noon tanker. And this is just used as a gauge wheel, so that when we're injecting manure, the injector doesn't go in the ground too far. So they're going to get spreading here in a little while, and we'll have to go ahead and get a spare rim, but this is probably not ever going to bother. So it's good to go now. Well, we have this head completely done. We've got all our stripper plates back on. We also replaced this little wear strip that's on the auger, and it didn't look like the old one was wore that much, but you can kind of see that it's not quite 1/8 of an inch wore right here. And then as we get out towards the end of the auger, it's just about flush right here. Now the old pieces, they were rounded right over, and they had the bolts just about wore off as well. So we've got that on there. Now we're going to go ahead and run everything, make sure that everything is put together correctly. And this will be the first that I've actually ran this head. So we'll make sure everything is good to go here. And then we have to pull the head off. I've got a couple of shear bar bolts to replace. There's a smooth roll scraper that I have to put on as well. However, I do not think that I have the correct parts here for that. So we'll run this, and then we'll unhook the head, take the head off of the chopper, and then we'll have to back it up and open up the cutter head area and work on a couple of the things on the inside of the chopper. Just a couple hours left of the actual chopper itself. The head is done. Well, maybe today or right now is as good a time as any to extend the block heater cord on this payloader. We're supposed to get real cold temperatures here tonight, and we're just getting around to extending the block heater cord on this loader. We ended up buying this loader back in, I guess it was the end of August. It has a block heater on it. However, the cord for the block heater sets in right in alongside the engine there. So what I've done it to the other two loaders as well, is I've extended that cord so that it is easier to get to, so you don't have to open up the side panel every time you go to plug the loader in or unplug it. What I've used is an old 25-foot lead cord. This lead cord will be able to get used for another project similar to this. This lead cord needs a new end on it anyways. So I plugged the female portion of it to the block heater cord, which is sitting right here. And I've got that zip tied up alongside the frame rail there. We've got it coming out over the top of the hydraulic oil reservoir. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just cut it off right about here somewhere, put an end on it, and then when it is time to plug the loader in, you'll be able to plug it in when you climb out of the machine, and then you'll know that the loader is plugged in, because before you get into the machine, you'll be able to see that it is plugged in right by the step there. On the other 624, the cord is in that same general area. On the 544, I ran the cord back through, and the cord comes out where the fuel tank, where the fuel fill is. That's not as great of a place to plug it in, but at least it's there and it's not in the engine compartment. We've done the same thing to the telehandlers too. We've extended the cord out so we can get to them there. So I'm just going to put a cord end on that, and then this machine will be ready to be plugged in the event that we get real cold weather. We like to plug the stuff in at night anyways, just so that we're not having to deal with a hard start first thing in the morning when we're going to feed cows. So I'll get that cord end on, and then I'll show you what that looks like. All right, we've got our cord end on there. Now this thing is ready to go. I know what you're thinking, why would you wreck a lead cord? But this is a 25-foot lead cord, and there's half of this cord left to do something similar like this to the next piece of equipment. So we'll go ahead and close this unit up, and she'll be ready for morning. All right, so we are getting into this project a little deeper. Not really any deeper than I thought, but this is taking a lot longer than actually 2 hours that I thought I had left to do on this. Now I have the smooth roll scraper to replace. When I originally took the head off, all I had to do was take this smooth roll scraper off and replace the wedge that goes in on the back side of the shear bar. I put everything together here last night, and I did not like how the wedge went in there, and on this back side of this beam, I was not aware whether or not this was normal or not. So I stopped right there. I didn't go any farther. I sent some pictures to Jake, and he says that's war. So they ended up having this beam down to the Cortland store, the Cortland Kaz store, and I went down and picked it up, and I could not believe the difference in thickness of this new beam compared to this old one. This old beam measures, well, the new one measures 1 13/16 inches thickness here, and this is where the shear bar sets onto. And the new one measures 1 13/16 inches. This old one measures 1 5/8 inches. So this is the shear bar here, and that shear bar sets on top. We'll show you how that all looks when we get it back together. I don't know if the camera is going to pick up the wear in this beam, and this is mounted in the chopper just like this. So this is the top. The knife drum comes around here. Then you've got the wedge that sits on the back side, which is this piece here, and there's just a little bit of an area that the material can get in there, but you can kind of see on this new one here, there's a pretty good sized lip right there, which is gone off of this old one. Now, I don't know why Casanova had this in stock, but to the the best of my knowledge, from what they told me, they've never sold one of these before, just because no one has wore one out yet. Now this is the wedge that we originally went to replace. Here is the new one, and then here is the old one. Now when I put the knives in the chopper, I could feel on the back side of this, I could feel the bolts protruding out through the threaded holes, and I was unaware that there was any kind of a wedge on there. I originally thought this whole beam was wore out, but they had told me that, you know, no, there's a wear wedge that is mounted on there, and all you need to do is replace that. Well, as you can see, we had to replace the actual beam. This beam right here was just shy of $2,000. Here is the invoice right here, and there is the beam itself, $1,998.83. So this has got 4 years on it and many a tons on there. So we'll show you what things look like once we get it bolted back together. But you can kind of see the Army truck in the background here. We had a growling noise in this, and I originally thought that the inner fender well on that other side was rubbing against the tire one day. And when I was going down the road with it, I'd turn the wheel one way and the noise would go away. So I said, it's got to be that inner fender well. So I pushed the fender well out of the way, kept that from rubbing on the tire, and the noise was still there. So the boys have pulled this in, and it had, I don't know, I guess the driver's side wheel bearing was shot, and the passenger side wasn't much better. So what they're doing now is replacing a lot of the components in the front end of this. Both wheel bearings, tie rod ends, the half shafts. Oh, what else? You putting ball joints in this?
Tie rod ends, sway bar links.
Just a lot of good stuff. And then I had Garrett pull this in the other day, and I said, you know, jack it up. It didn't seem too awful bad. We had a lot of wandering in the tie rods, and at that point the bearings hadn't quite let go. They were just grinding inside themselves, and I said, you know what might be wrong? We might be low on oil on that front differential. Garrett checked the oil on the front diff, the transfer case, everything was fine. So we drove it another day or two afterwards, and the noise got horrible. And then they pulled it in here today. While we were underneath it, we did see that there was a little bit of a coolant. It was weeping a little bit of coolant, and they pressure tested it, and they have found that this needs a water pump. So it's been quite a few years, I think, since we've done a water pump on this, and just about the whole front clip. When you did this several years ago, the whole front, you had to take the whole front clip off. Bumper, radiator, everything out. Yeah. So buy a Duramax, they said. Right? Of course, not to say Cummins is any better, but I think maybe the water pump would last a little longer at a Cummins, but oh well, that's just the nature of the beast here. So they're gonna get this together, and they haven't yet decided if they're gonna tear this apart in this bay or if they're going to put it over in one of the other smaller bays, so we're not killing the shop here. But whatever they do, it's going to be killing a spot anyway. So we'll go ahead and get these parts in this chopper here. They've got an issue with this 8110. It's got a fuel pump issue or something, and we might have to have Kaz come over and take a look at it. It seems to be that it's something to do with the harness that goes to the injection pump itself. And on these 10 series, the hoods on the 20s lift up kind of like a car hood. These 10 series are bolted rigid, much like a you know, a 4450 or a 55 or a 60 series. It wasn't until the 20 series that they made them a little easier to work on. So they're getting the hood unbolted, and we're gonna check the wire harness ourselves to see if maybe there's not something simple there, but it might involve Kaz coming out and hooking a computer up to it to see if it's got an issue with the injection pump itself, or if it's the ECU. So we're really not sure at this point, but we need to get the hood off. Well, we've got our new parts all bolted into place. We ended up replacing this beam, you seen that earlier, along with the wedge, which is hard to see from here, but this wedge bolts to the back side of this beam with these 10 bolts here, and that wedge sits in on the back side, and it kind of creates more of a curved pattern from after the material comes off of the shear bar, which bolts on top of this beam, and then it sends it down through the spiral band and then up to the blower. Now we've also replaced this smooth roll scraper. This was like 900 bucks. I think the wedge was around 700. And then this beam here was just shy of 2 grand. So we got $3,600 into just those components there. Not to mention how much money we put in to the head. So we'll show you kind of how these parts go in the chopper. Now this is the actual beam here, and this is the front part, kind of what you're looking at here. And then the shear bar is this piece here. That would bolt on top of the beam. If I could set that up there with one hand. This is not quite setting in the spot that it needs to set in. But you got the knife drum that comes around here, cuts the material off, and then this wedge is on there to kind of create more of a curved area from that, for that material to just kind of transition back through the down around the spiral band, and then it blows it up to the blower. Now you can see the amount of wear that this old beam has in it. This new wedge would come up to about here, and then this wedge wore past the point of you know, there was no effectiveness really in this wedge, and then it started wearing the beam off here. So that's why we had to replace that. This machine has got 4 years on it. Somebody had a comment here a little while ago, maybe it was in the last chopper video or something, that they can't believe that this machine is wore out so much, and that their Klaus machine's got 5,000 hours on it, and they have not had to put the amount of parts in their machine that we've had to put into this one. Well, these are wear items. When you run the acreage and the tonnage through your machine, doesn't matter how many hours you've got, it's how many tons you're chopping per hour, you're gonna get this kind of wear. The head, for example, the pickup head teeth, the bearings, these wear strips that are on the auger, you can idle your machine all day long. You're going to be racking up hours, and this stuff is not going to wear out. But when you're running tonnage through it, when you're pushing the machine and actually having material come into the chopper, you start to wear these items. So that's why we have to put the amount of parts into this machine that we're putting into it. It's the amount of tonnage that's going through it. So they've got this Army truck. They've got the front end done. They got that all back together. The wheels are back on it. Now, this had the water pump was leaking on it, and we're into this now, and we're almost to the point of pulling the water pump off. But you have to take everything off, the whole front end of the motor here just to get into the water pump. We've got to get the harmonic balancer off of there yet. It's a lot of work just to get to that stinking water pump. So let's get this chopper wrapped up here and get it out of here. I've got to put kicker plates in the mixer wagons, and I need this bay here. We've got every other bay full. So we'll join back up with you in a little while here when we back this machine out, and then we'll sign off of this video here and get on to the next job. Well, we've got this all ready to go back together here. We've got the shear bar in there. We threw a quick coat of paint on everything here just to kind of cover up all of the metal that didn't no longer have paint on it. We're just going to close this up, put the head on it, and roll this out the door, and that is going to do it for this video here, folks. I want to thank you for watching, and we will catch you at the next video.